The rain hammered against the windows of the Norfolk Naval Base administrative building as Commander Elena Martinez pushed through the heavy glass doors. Water dripped from her plain gray raincoat, the one she'd bought at a discount store 3 years ago and never bothered to replace. Underneath, her uniform was wrinkled from the 18-hour flight from Jakarta, where she'd been working undercover for the past 6 months. Elena didn't look like much that morning. Her dark hair, usually pulled back in a regulation bun, hung loose and damp around her shoulders. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She'd lost weight. The classified mission had aged her, carved lines into her face that hadn't been there before. She looked like someone who'd been through something difficult and hadn't quite found her way back yet. She was exactly 3 hours early for her scheduled debrief with Admiral Patterson. The building was nearly empty this early on a Saturday morning, just the way she'd planned it. Elena had learned long ago that sometimes the best way to slip back into normal life was quietly, without fanfare or questions. The hallway stretched before her, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Her boots squeaked against the polished linoleum floor as she made her way toward the records office. She needed to update her personnel file before the official debrief. 6 months of radio silence meant 6 months of paperwork waiting for her. She rounded the corner near the stairwell, her mind already sorting through the stack of reports she'd need to file. That's when it happened. Captain Morrison came barreling around the same corner from the opposite direction. Moving fast, his attention focused on the phone pressed against his ear. He was a large man, over 6 feet tall, built like the linebacker he'd been in college. The collision was inevitable. They crashed into each other with the force of 2 vehicles meeting at an intersection. Elena, already exhausted and off balance, stumbled backward. Her shoulder bag flew from her grip, contents scattering across the floor. Morrison's phone clattered away. His face flushed red instantly, anger replacing surprise in the span of a heartbeat. He didn't apologize. Didn't check if she was hurt. His eyes swept over her, once taking in the wet hair. The wrinkled uniform visible beneath her open raincoat. The tired face of a woman who looked like she'd been sleeping in her car. "Watch where you're going." His voice boomed through the empty hallway, sharp and commanding. It was the voice of a man used to being obeyed without question. Elena bent to gather her scattered belongings, a worn notebook, 2 pens, her military ID that had slid under a water fountain. "I'm sorry, Captain. You didn't what? Didn't think? Didn't look?" Morrison loomed over her, not bothering to help. "What are you even doing in this building? Personnel offices don't open until 0900. She reached for her ID, but his boot came down inches from her hand. Not quite stepping on it, but close enough to make a point. Elena looked up at him, seeing the calculation in his eyes. He was deciding something about her, making judgments based on nothing more than appearance. "I asked you a question, sailor." His tone had shifted. Not quite insubordinate yet, but dismissive. The way someone speaks to a person they've decided doesn't matter. "You look like you've been on a 3-day bender. What's your name and unit?" Elena straightened slowly, leaving her ID on the floor for the moment. Something cold settled in her chest. She recognized this type. Morrison wore his captain's insignia like armor, wielded his rank like a weapon against anyone he perceived as beneath him. She'd met a dozen like him over her 23 years of service. Men who climbed the ladder by playing politics instead of serving with honor. Men who confused authority with leadership. "Commander Elena Martinez," she said quietly. "I'm here for a meeting with Admiral Patterson." Morrison's laugh was sharp and mocking. "Commander? You?" He shook his head, genuine amusement dancing in his eyes. "Right, and I'm the Secretary of the Navy. Listen, whoever you are, impersonating an officer is a serious offense. I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, but I'm not playing any game." "Captain, then show me your ID, proper identification." He crossed his arms over his chest, blocking her path completely now. Because from where I'm standing, you look like someone who wandered in off the street. Maybe someone with a drinking problem, looking for a warm place to sleep. The words should have stung. Maybe once they would have. But Elena had spent the last 6 months watching good people die in service of their country. She'd held the hand of a 19-year-old Marine as he bled out in a warehouse in Jakarta, whispering messages to his mother that Elena would have to deliver personally. She'd made impossible choices in the dark, sent people into danger, lived with the weight of command in a way Morrison probably never had. A captain insulting her in a hallway? That was nothing. My ID is on the floor, she said evenly. Right next to your boot. Morrison glanced down, then back up at her. He didn't move his foot. Pick it up then. Let's see this supposed commander's identification. Elena bent slowly, reaching for the ID. As she did, Morrison shifted his weight. Whether intentional or not, his boot pressed down on the edge of her ID card. Captain, you're standing on it. Am I? His tone was light, almost playful. He was enjoying this. Clumsy of me. Just like it was clumsy of you to run into a superior officer. You know what I think? I think you found that uniform in a thrift store. I think you're trying to pull some kind of scam. Elena straightened again, leaving the ID where it was. The cold feeling in her chest had spread, numbing her exhaustion. She could feel the injustice of the moment settling over her like a familiar coat. This was what she'd fought against her entire career: officers who led with ego instead of example. Men who used their rank to bully instead of inspire. I'm not a scam artist, Captain Morrison. She used his name deliberately, having glimpsed it on his uniform before the collision. I'm a commander in the United States Navy. I've just returned from an overseas assignment, and I'm here on official business. Official business. He repeated the words mockingly. Looking like that? You expect me to believe you're on official business? I expect you to behave like an officer, Elena said quietly. The words hung in the air between them. Morrison's face darkened. The hallway had grown even quieter, if that was possible. Somewhere in the distance, Elena could hear the soft hum of a floor buffer, the muted conversation of security guards changing shifts. Normal sounds of a military base waking up on a Saturday morning. But here, in this fluorescent-lit corridor, there was only tension. Captain Morrison's jaw tightened at her words. Behave like an officer? He took a step closer, using his size to intimidate. You're going to lecture me about being an officer? You, who can't even maintain basic grooming standards. You, who comes stumbling into restricted areas looking like you slept under a bridge. Elena held her ground. She'd faced down armed insurgents in the Hindu Kush. She'd stared across negotiating tables at men who would have killed her without hesitation if they'd known who she really was. Morrison's anger was almost quaint by comparison. Captain, I'm going to ask you once more to let me retrieve my identification. And I'm going to ask you once more to explain what you're doing in this building. Morrison pulled out his own phone. In fact, I think we should get security involved. Let them sort out whether you're a real officer or just someone with access to a uniform shop. Before Elena could respond, footsteps echoed from the stairwell. Lieutenant Commander Paul Henderson emerged, carrying a coffee cup and a folder of papers. He was younger than Morrison, maybe 40, with the lean build of a distance runner. Henderson's eyes swept the scene, taking in the scattered belongings on the floor. Morrison's aggressive stance, Elena's tired face. Is there a problem here, Captain? Henderson's tone was carefully neutral. Morrison turned, seeming relieved to have a witness. Henderson, good. This woman claims to be a commander, but she won't produce proper identification. She ran into me in the hallway, and I suspect she may be impersonating an officer. Henderson's gaze shifted to Elena. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, recognition, maybe, or curiosity. Then it was gone, replaced by professional courtesy. "Ma'am, I'm Lieutenant Commander Henderson. If you could provide identification, we can clear this up quickly." "My ID is on the floor," Elena said. "The captain is standing on it." Henderson looked down, then at Morrison. "Captain, if you could." "She put it there deliberately," Morrison interrupted. "Dropped all her things like she was trying to create a scene. Probably hoping for some kind of attention or handout." Elena closed her eyes briefly. The exhaustion was catching up with her, making her bones ache. She'd been awake for nearly 30 hours. The flight from Jakarta to San Francisco, then the connection to Norfolk. No sleep, just mission reports to memorize and burn. Encrypted communications to her handlers. The constant vigilance of someone who'd been living under an assumed identity for half a year. She wanted a shower. She wanted food. She wanted to sit in Admiral Patterson's office and debrief properly, then go home to her apartment and sleep for 14 hours. She did not want to deal with Derek Morrison's ego trip. "Lieutenant Commander," she said, opening her eyes. "Would you mind picking up my ID?" Since the captain seems determined to make this difficult. Henderson hesitated, glancing at Morrison. In that hesitation, Elena saw the calculation, the political risk of helping her, the potential career consequences of crossing a senior officer. It was the same calculation she'd seen 1,000 times before. Good people staying quiet because speaking up was dangerous. "It's right there," Elena added softly. "Brown leather wallet, just beside the captain's left boot." Henderson bent and retrieved it. He flipped open the wallet, examined the military ID inside, and his eyes widened. He looked at Elena again, really looked at her this time, and she saw the moment he understood. "Captain Morrison," Henderson said carefully. "This is Commander Elena Martinez. Her credentials are valid." Morrison snatched the wallet from Henderson's hands. He studied the ID, his expression moving from skepticism to confusion to something darker. This could be fake. The photo barely looks like her. "The photo was taken 6 months ago," Elena said. "Before my last assignment." "What assignment?" Morrison's voice had lost some of its certainty, but none of its hostility. "What were you doing that explains looking like this?" "That's classified, Captain. Classified." He practically spat the word. "Convenient. You know what I think? I think you're hiding behind that excuse. I think you've been off on some personal leave, partying or drinking or whatever, and now you're showing up looking like hell and expecting everyone to just accept it." Henderson shifted uncomfortably. "Captain, maybe we should. Stay out of this, Henderson." Morrison thrust the wallet back at Elena without looking at her. "I don't care what your ID says. The way you look, the way you carry yourself, it's disgraceful. You're a disgrace to the uniform." Something snapped inside Elena. Not violently. She had too much training for that, but definitely. Quietly. Like a wire pulled too tight finally. Giving way. "A disgrace," she repeated softly. "That's right. Look at you. Hair a mess. Uniform wrinkled. You look like you've been sleeping in your car. What kind of example are you setting for junior enlisted? What kind of officer shows up to a military base looking like a homeless person?" Elena picked up her remaining belongings from the floor, the notebook, the pens, a small manila envelope containing her mission summary. She moved slowly, deliberately, giving herself time to decide how to respond. Part of her wanted to walk away, to save her energy for the debrief. But another part, the part that had spent 23 years fighting for respect in a male-dominated field, couldn't let this stand. "Captain Morrison," she said, straightening to her full height. She was 6 inches shorter than him, but somehow the difference didn't seem to matter anymore. "6 months ago, I was sent to Indonesia on a classified intelligence operation. I can't tell you the details, but I can tell you that 3 American service members are alive today because of that operation. I can tell you that I watched a good man die in my arms because I sent him into a situation that went bad. I can tell you that I haven't slept in my own bed, worn clean clothes more than 2 days in a row, or had a hot meal that wasn't interrupted by enemy activity in 183 days. Morrison opened his mouth, but Elena wasn't finished. I flew commercial from Jakarta because military transport would have blown my cover. I wore civilian clothes. I sat in the middle seat of a packed plane for 14 hours next to a man who snored and a woman with a screaming baby. I had a 4-hour layover in San Francisco where I changed into this uniform in an airport bathroom. Then another 6-hour flight to get here. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat properly. And yes, I look tired. Yes, my uniform is wrinkled. Yes, my hair is a mess. That's still no excuse for. I came straight here because Admiral Patterson needs my debrief for a congressional briefing on Monday. Because the work I did matters. Because American lives depend on the intelligence I gathered. Morrison's face had gone from red to nearly purple. Around them, the hallway had begun to fill with more personnel early arrivals for weekend duty shifts. Marines from the security detail changing posts. A small audience was gathering, drawn by raised voices and the unmistakable tension of a confrontation. You think I care about your sob story? Morrison's voice carried down the corridor. You think being tired gives you permission to show up looking unprofessional? I've been deployed. I've done my time in combat zones. And I never, not once, let my standards slip. Elena studied him more carefully. His uniform was indeed immaculate, perfectly pressed. Shoes polished to a mirror shine. Ribbons aligned with mechanical precision. But something about the array of decorations bothered her. The combat action ribbon, yes. A couple of campaign medals. But the spacing was off. The order slightly wrong. The marks of someone who cared more about appearance than substance. What deployments were those, Captain? Elena asked quietly. Where did you serve in combat? Morrison's eyes narrowed dangerously. That's none of your concern, Commander. And it's irrelevant to the issue at hand, which is your complete lack of military bearing. It's absolutely relevant, Elena countered. You're judging my professionalism based on how I look after returning from a classified mission. I'm judging your leadership based on how you treat a fellow officer you know nothing about. A female petty officer near the water fountain whispered something to her companion. Elena caught the words, ... told him ... and saw the younger woman nod approvingly. The audience was picking sides. Morrison noticed too. His expression shifted, became more calculated. He was losing control of the situation and knew it. Time to change tactics. You want to talk about leadership? He gestured broadly, playing to the watching personnel now. Let's talk about it. Leadership means maintaining standards, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. What do these young sailors think when they see a commander showing up, looking like she just rolled out of bed? What message does that send? It sends the message that sometimes the mission matters more than appearances, Elena said. That sometimes doing your job means getting dirty. That sometimes. No. Morrison cut her off sharply. No. That's exactly the kind of weak thinking that's ruining the military. Standards exist for a reason. Discipline exists for a reason. And officers who can't maintain basic grooming standards have no business wearing the uniform. Lieutenant Commander Henderson cleared his throat. Captain, perhaps we should take this somewhere more private. Morrison ignored him. He was committed now, too deep into the confrontation to back down gracefully. You know what I think, Commander Martinez? I think you're using this classified mission story as an excuse. I think you've been on some cushy assignment somewhere, let yourself go, and now you're trying to play the hardship card. You're entitled to think whatever you want, Captain. Damn right I am. and I'm entitled to file a formal complaint about an officer showing up to a military installation in an unprofessional state. In fact, I think I will." Elena felt the weight of watching eyes on her. Junior enlisted personnel, other officers, security guards, all waiting to see how she'd respond. This was a teaching moment, she realized. Not for Morrison, he was beyond teaching, but for everyone else. They were watching to see if authority could be questioned, if bullying would be tolerated, if someone would stand up to the man with the louder voice and the senior rank. "Go ahead and file your complaint, Captain," Elena said calmly. "Make sure you include the part where you refused to let me pick up my identification. The part where you accused me of impersonating an officer. The part where you called me a disgrace to the uniform in front of enlisted personnel. I'm sure Admiral Patterson will find that very interesting reading." Morrison's jaw worked silently for a moment. Then he stepped forward, closing the distance between them until he was well inside her personal space. "Are you threatening me, Commander?" "I'm informing you of facts, Captain. You think dropping Admiral Patterson's name scares me? I've worked with half the admirals in this command. I have connections you couldn't imagine. You're nobody. A washed-up commander who probably peaked years ago and has been coasting ever since." The words stung more than Elena wanted to admit, not because they were true, but because they echoed her own exhausted thoughts from the long flight home. The doubts that crept in during quiet moments. Was she still effective? Had the mission been worth the cost? Would anyone remember or care about the work she'd done in the shadows? "I see," she said softly. "No, I don't think you do see." Morrison's voice dropped lower, more menacing. "I don't think you understand who you're dealing with. I could make your life very difficult, Commander. I could request investigations into your fitness for duty, your mental health, your ability to maintain security clearances. I could raise questions about what you were really doing for 6 months. Because looking at you right now, I have serious doubts." It was a threat, clear and unmistakable. "Use your connections to hurt me, or back down." Elena felt something cold and sharp crystallize in her chest. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about every junior officer Morrison had probably bullied. Every enlisted sailor he'd crushed under his heel. Every good person who'd kept their head down and their mouth shut because fighting back was too dangerous. "Captain Morrison," she said clearly, making sure her voice carried to the watching crowd. "You have repeatedly questioned my credentials, insulted my appearance, accused me of impersonation, and now threaten to abuse your position to damage my career. All because I had the misfortune of colliding with you in a hallway. Is that an accurate summary?" Morrison realized his mistake immediately. By confirming it, he'd look like a bully. By denying it, he'd look weak. "I was expressing legitimate concerns about, yes or no, Captain. Is that what happened here?" His hand shot out and grabbed her arm. Not hard enough to really hurt, but firm enough to move her. He pushed her sideways, toward the wall, using his size and strength to physically intimidate her into silence. "You need to learn your place, Commander," he hissed. "You need to learn that some of us have earned our respect, and some people need to shut their mouths," and he shoved her. Harder than he probably intended, his anger giving strength to the movement. Elena stumbled backward, her shoulder blade connecting with the wall hard enough to knock the breath from her lungs. For a moment, she couldn't breathe, couldn't think. There was only the shock of impact, the pain radiating through her back, the stunned silence from the watching crowd. Morrison's hand was still extended, still touching her shoulder. His face showed surprise at his own actions, then calculation, how to spin this, how to justify it. And then he froze. His eyes had dropped to her uniform collar, to the small pin she wore there, partially hidden by the wet raincoat she'd forgotten to remove in all the commotion. A pin that shouldn't be on a commander's uniform. A pin that changed everything. Morrison went pale. His hand dropped away from her shoulder, as if burned. He took a step back, then another. That's not. You're not. His voice had lost all its certainty, all its command presence. That's an admiral's pin. Elena straightened slowly, ignoring the pain in her back. She shrugged out of the raincoat, letting it fall to the floor. On her collar, clearly visible now, was the insignia she'd earned 3 months ago. The insignia that was part of her cover for the Indonesia operation. She'd needed the clearance levels and command, authority that came with the rank. The insignia that wouldn't be publicly announced until she completed her current assignment. She wasn't Commander Martinez. She was Rear Admiral Elena Martinez. The hallway had gone absolutely silent. Even the distant sounds of the building seemed to have faded away, leaving only the harsh fluorescent lighting and the collective held breath of 24 witnesses. Lieutenant Commander Henderson stood frozen, his coffee cup tilted at a dangerous angle, brown liquid threatening to spill. The petty officers near the water fountain had their hands pressed to their mouths. A Marine security guard had stopped mid-stride, one boot still raised off the ground. Captain Morrison stared at Elena's collar insignia the way someone might stare at an approaching tidal wave with the horrified, understanding that something terrible was about to happen and there was absolutely nothing he could do to stop it. "Admiral," he whispered. The word came out strangled, barely audible. Elena adjusted her uniform jacket, wincing slightly as the motion pulled at her bruised shoulder. She bent and retrieved her raincoat from the floor, folded it over her arm with careful precision. Then she picked up her shoulder bag and arranged the items inside with deliberate slowness, giving Morrison time to fully comprehend his situation. When she finally looked up, her expression was calm, almost gentle. That somehow made it worse. "Captain Derek Morrison," she said quietly. "In the past 15 minutes, you have physically assaulted a superior officer, made false accusations of impersonation, threatened to abuse your authority for personal revenge, and conducted yourself in a manner unbecoming an officer of the United States Navy. All of this in front of multiple witnesses in a public area of a military installation." Morrison's mouth opened and closed silently. The purple flush had drained from his face, leaving him pale and sweating despite the building's cool temperature. "Admiral, I didn't. If you had known my rank, you would have behaved differently." Elena's voice remained soft, but there was steel underneath. "Is that really the defense you want to offer?" "No, that's not what I meant. I was just..." Morrison's eyes darted around the hallway, looking for support, for escape, for anything that might save him. He found nothing but condemning stares from junior personnel who'd witnessed everything. Lieutenant Commander Henderson finally found his voice. "Admiral Martinez, on behalf of everyone here, I apologize for..." Elena held up a hand, cutting him off gently. "Lieutenant Commander, you have nothing to apologize for. You attempted to de-escalate the situation. You treated me with professional courtesy, even when you weren't certain of my identity. That's exactly what a good officer does." Henderson straightened slightly, relief flickering across his face. "Thank you, ma'am. Captain Morrison, however, ... Elena turned her full attention back to him. "You present me with a difficult situation. On one hand, I just returned from a mission where I watched genuinely good people make impossible sacrifices for their country, where I saw the best of what military service can be. On the other hand, here you are, showing me perhaps the worst. Admiral, please, I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But You're a captain in the United States Navy," Elena interrupted. "You've been in service for what? 16 years according to your service badge? You hold a position of authority and leadership. And in those 16 years, you never learned the most basic principle of military leadership, that you treat every person in uniform with respect, regardless of their rank or appearance, because they're your brothers and sisters in service." Morrison said nothing. What could he say? A young sailor, barely 20, stood near the stairwell entrance. Elena noticed the way the girl's eyes shone with something like vindication. The way she held herself a little straighter now. How many times had Morrison pulled this routine? How many junior personnel had he bullied, knowing they couldn't fight back? I've dealt with your type before, Captain, Elena continued. Officers who confuse authority with leadership. Who think respect is something you can demand rather than something you earn. Who use rank as a weapon to hurt people instead of a responsibility to serve them. She took a step toward him. Morrison actually flinched. The military is built on a chain of command, yes. But it's held together by something more important: trust. Trust that our leaders will take care of us. Trust that authority will be used justly. Trust that someone who wears the uniform is part of the same family, fighting for the same cause. You broke that trust today. I understand, Admiral. I do. And I swear, if you give me another chance. Elena's laugh was dry and humorless. Another chance to do what, exactly? To continue bullying junior officers when you think no one important is watching? To abuse your position for another 16 years? Morrison's desperation was palpable now. Please, my career, my family. I have a wife and 2 kids. I'll lose everything. For the first time, Elena's expression softened slightly. Your family. Tell me, Captain, do your children know what kind of man their father is? What kind of officer? Do they know you push people into walls? That you threaten to destroy careers over personal slights? No, God, no. They think I'm a hero. Then maybe, Elena said quietly, it's time you became one. Or at least stopped being the villain. She turned to Lieutenant Commander Henderson. What's the protocol for reporting an assault on a superior officer? Morrison made a sound like he'd been punched. Henderson hesitated, clearly torn between duty and sympathy. Admiral, the protocol would be to file a formal report with the base JAG office. There would be an investigation, likely a court-martial for assault. But given the circumstances, if you chose not to press charges. Elena looked back at Morrison, studying him, watching the fear and shame war on his face. She thought about the young sailor near the stairwell, about all the others who'd probably suffered under this man's command. She thought about justice and mercy and which one served the greater good. Captain Morrison, look at me. He raised his eyes reluctantly. I'm not going to file assault charges. Not because you deserve mercy, but because I've seen too much genuine evil in the last 6 months to waste my time on petty cruelty. But I'm going to do several things. Are you listening? Yes, ma'am. His voice was barely a whisper. First, you're going to undergo a full command review. Your leadership style, your treatment of subordinates, your fitness for continued service. If even one person corroborates the behavior you displayed today, you're done. Not just reprimanded. Done. Discharged, pension affected, the works. Morrison nodded mutely. Second, you're going to write a formal apology. Not to me, I don't care. To every member of your current and past commands. Every person you've bullied, disrespected, or abused. And you're going to mean it. I will. I promise I will. Third, you're going to seek counseling. Anger management, whatever you need. Because there's something broken inside you that makes you hurt people when you should be leading them. Yes, ma'am. Elena stepped closer, dropping her voice so only Morrison could hear. And fourth, most importantly, you're going to remember this moment. Every single day for the rest of your career, you're going to remember what it felt like to realize you'd assaulted an admiral. And you're going to use that fear, that shame, to become better. Not because I'm an admiral, but because I'm a human being who deserves basic respect. Just like everyone you'll ever command. She stepped back, raising her voice to normal volume. Lieutenant Commander Henderson, Please escort Captain Morrison to the JAG office to begin the formal reporting process for this incident. I want everything documented, times, witnesses, statements. Everything. Yes, Admiral. As Henderson moved to Morrison's side, Elena added one final thought. Captain, people are going to ask you what happened today. And you're going to tell them the truth. All of it. Not because I'm ordering you to, but because lying about it would make you irredeemable. Do you understand? I understand, Admiral Martinez. She watched them walk away, Henderson professional and stiff, Morrison moving like a man in a daze. The crowd in the hallway began to disperse, though Elena caught the looks they gave her. Respect, approval, even a few grateful smiles from junior personnel, who'd probably dealt with Morrison before. The young sailor near the stairwell approached hesitantly. Admiral? I'm Petty Officer Second Class, Amy Carson. Thank you for standing up to him. Captain Morrison, he said things to me before, made me feel small. But I didn't think anyone would ever. Elena smiled at her, really smiled for the first time that morning. But Petty Officer Carson, anyone who tries to make you feel small is trying to make themselves feel big. Don't ever let them succeed. You wear that uniform with honor. Don't let anyone take that from you. Carson's eyes shone with tears. She was too disciplined to let fall. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. As the young woman walked away, Elena felt some of her exhaustion lift. This, she thought, was why the mission had mattered. Not for the intelligence gathered or the operations completed, but for moments like this. For the young sailors who needed to know that someone would stand up for them. That authority could be used justly. That the system, however imperfect, still had room for courage and integrity. She checked her watch. Still an hour before her meeting with Admiral Patterson. Time enough to clean up, maybe grab coffee. Definitely find somewhere to sit down before her legs gave out. The hallway was almost empty now. Just Elena and her scattered thoughts and the dull ache in her shoulder where Morrison had shoved her. Against the wall. Worth it, she decided. Definitely worth it. Admiral Patterson's office was on the third floor, a corner room with windows overlooking the naval yard. Elena could see ships docked in neat rows, their gray hulls patient and permanent against the morning sky. The rain had stopped, leaving everything clean and sharp-edged. Come in, Elena. Patterson stood as she entered, moving around his desk with the ease of someone who'd held command so long he no longer needed to prove it. He was in his 60s, white-haired but sharp-eyed, with the weathered face of someone who'd spent decades at sea. Close the door, please. We have a lot to discuss. She closed the door and stood at attention, military-bearing automatic after so many years. Patterson waved her to a chair with an impatient gesture. Sit down before you fall down. You look terrible, by the way. When's the last time you slept? Jakarta, sir. Tuesday night, local time. That was 4 days ago. He poured coffee from a carafe on his desk, pushed a cup toward her. Drink, and don't call me sir when it's just us. We've known each other too long for that nonsense. Elena accepted the coffee gratefully, wrapping her hands around the warm ceramic. Thank you. For the coffee and for agreeing to meet on a Saturday. I got a call about 20 minutes ago, Patterson said, settling back into his chair. From Commander Henderson. He said there was an incident with Captain Morrison. Said Morrison assaulted you in a hallway? It's been handled. I'm sure it has. That's not what I asked. Patterson's eyes were gentle but unrelenting. Are you hurt? Do you need medical attention? Just bruised, John. Nothing serious. Physical bruises heal. The other kind take longer. He sipped his own coffee, studying her over the rim. Morrison's been a problem for a while. Too connected to get rid of easily. Not quite bad enough to justify the political cost. Until today, apparently. You wanted him gone? I wanted him better. But yes, If that wasn't possible, then gone. Patterson set down his cup. How bad was it? The incident? Elena summarized briefly the collision, the insults, the physical confrontation. Patterson's expression grew darker with each sentence. I should have warned you about him, he said when she finished. Should have given you a heads up about the base politics. You've been gone so long, you walked in blind. I can handle Morrison. It's the mission debrief that matters now. The mission. Patterson pulled a file from his desk drawer, thick with documents. Before we get into that, there's something you need to know. Your promotion to Rear Admiral, the one we kept classified for operational security, it goes public next week. There'll be a ceremony, press coverage, the full protocol. But that's not the main reason I asked you here today. Elena set down her coffee cup, sudden tension coiling in her stomach. What is it? The intelligence you gathered in Jakarta. The network you infiltrated. The information you sent back about arms trafficking and terrorist financing. Elena, it was bigger than we thought. Much bigger. The operations we were able to shut down based on your work. We're talking about saving hundreds, maybe thousands of lives. That's good news. So why do you look like you're about to give me bad news? Patterson's smile was sad. Because I know you, Elena. You're going to ask about Benjamin Harris. The name hit her like a physical blow. Petty Officer First Class Benjamin Harris. 23 years old, son of a schoolteacher from Ohio, who'd volunteered for the Jakarta operation because he was brave and smart and believed in the mission. Who'd been in that warehouse when everything went wrong. Who died in her arms while she tried desperately to stop the bleeding. His last words, a message for his mother. We recovered his body, Patterson said quietly. Brought him home 2 weeks ago. Military funeral with full honors. His mother was there. His sister. About 300 people from his hometown. Elena's hands tightened around the coffee cup. Did his mother? Did she get the message? The one he asked me to deliver? She did. I delivered it myself, along with a letter from you that arrived through classified channels. Patterson paused. She wanted me to tell you something. She said, tell Admiral Martinez that my son died doing something that mattered. Tell her not to carry guilt that belongs to the people who killed him. The tears came without permission, sliding hot down Elena's cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. After 6 months of holding everything inside, of being someone else, of carrying the weight alone, she let herself break just a little in the safety of Patterson's office. I sent him in there, she whispered. I made the call. I knew it was dangerous, and I sent him anyway. You made the right tactical decision with the information you had. The after-action review confirmed it. What happened to Harris was bad luck and bad timing, nothing more. He was 23, John, 23 years old. And he was a sailor who understood the risks, who volunteered knowing what might happen, who saved 6 other lives by holding that position as long as he did. Patterson leaned forward, his voice firm but compassionate. You honor his sacrifice by remembering it, Elena. Not by drowning in guilt over decisions you made in good faith. She nodded, not trusting her voice. They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of loss settling between them like an old friend. Finally, Patterson cleared his throat. The congressional briefing on Monday. They want you there. Want to hear firsthand about the operation. There's talk of commendations, maybe even a medal ceremony. The politicians want to look good by association. I don't want a medal. I know. But Harris's family will be there. His mother specifically asked to meet you. Said she has things she wants to say. Elena's breath caught. The thought of facing Benjamin Harris's mother, of seeing her son's eyes in her face, of accepting her gratitude or her rage or whatever she needed to express, it terrified her more than any combat situation ever had. I'll be there, she said. Whatever she needs, I'll be there. Good. Patterson relaxed slightly. Now, the other reason I wanted to meet today. Your next assignment. There's a next assignment? I thought I'd be here for at least 6 months, running analysis, and plans changed. The Joint Chiefs want you for something big. I can't give you details until the security clearances process, but it's important work. Command-level strategic planning. You'd be one of the youngest admirals in the position. But after Jakarta, they want someone who understands modern intelligence operations. It should have felt like victory. Recognition, advancement, important work. But all Elena felt was tired. Can I ask for some leave first? A few weeks to decompress? You can have a month, Patterson said immediately. Effective as soon as we finish the congressional briefings. Go home, Elena. Sleep in your own bed. Eat real food. Remember what it's like to be yourself instead of whoever you had to be in Jakarta. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I have one more piece of business. Patterson pulled out another folder, this one much thinner. Captain Morrison's personnel file. I've been reviewing his command history. There are complaints, Elena. Lots of them. But they were always dismissed or downplayed because Morrison has friends in high places. What are you going to do? What you should have let me do years ago when I first noticed the pattern. I'm recommending him for discharge. Not just removal from command, full discharge for conduct unbecoming. I'm going to make sure every one of those previous complaints gets reopened and investigated properly. Elena thought about Morrison's face when he realized what he'd done. The terror and shame. Part of her felt satisfaction at his downfall. But another part, the part that had spent 6 months watching people die for causes both noble and terrible, felt only sadness at the waist. He has a family, she said quietly. Kids who think he's a hero. He should have thought about that before he spent 16 years being a bully. Patterson's voice was hard. I know you have sympathy in you, Elena. It's one of your strengths. But some people don't deserve it. Some people just need to face consequences. Maybe, or maybe consequences and rehabilitation are mutually exclusive. Patterson studied her for a long moment. You're too good for this job sometimes. You know that. If I was too good for it, I wouldn't have been able to do what I did in Jakarta. Fair point. He stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Go home, Elena. Get some rest. I'll see you Monday morning at 0800 for prep before the congressional briefing. Elena stood as well, her body protesting the movement. The exhaustion was back, crushing and complete. Thank you, John, for everything. Thank you for your service. He said it formally, but his eyes were warm. And Elena? What happened today with Morrison? That young petty officer, Carson, she came to my office after. Said she wanted to file formal complaints about Morrison's past behavior. Said seeing you stand up to him gave her courage. She's braver than she knows. Maybe. Or maybe she just needed to see that standing up was possible. Patterson walked her to the door. You changed something today. Not just Morrison's career, but the way a lot of junior personnel think about speaking up against abuse. That matters more than any intelligence report. Elena left his office and made her way back through the building. The hallways were busier now, full of weekend duty personnel going about their routines. Several people nodded respectfully as she passed. Word had spread, apparently. She was no longer the tired woman in wrinkled uniform. She was Rear Admiral Martinez, the officer who'd put Morrison in his place. She wasn't sure how she felt about that dot outside. The sun had broken through the clouds, turning puddles into mirrors. Elena stood on the steps of the administrative building and breathed deeply, tasting salt air and diesel fuel and the indefinable scent of a naval base home. In a way that no apartment or house had ever been, her phone buzzed. A text message from a number she didn't recognize. Admiral Martinez, this is Amy Carson. I hope it's okay that I got your number from the duty roster. I just wanted to say thank you again. And to tell you that 6 other people have come forward about Captain Morrison. We're all filing formal complaints. We should have done it years ago, but we were scared. You showed us it was possible to fight back. So thank you for everything. Elena read the message 3 times, feeling something warm unfold in her chest. Maybe Patterson was right. Maybe changing Morrison's career wasn't the most important thing that happened today. Maybe it was showing 6 people that their voices mattered. That courage was contagious. That the system, however flawed, could still respond to justice. She typed a response. Petty Officer Carson, thank you for your courage. Remember, you found this strength in yourself. I just happened to be there when you needed an example. Stay brave. The Navy needs more people like you. Another text came in. This one from her sister Maria in California. Just heard through the family grapevine that you're back stateside. Please tell me you're okay. Please tell me you're coming home soon. Mom's been worried sick and won't admit it. Elena smiled. Home. She'd been so focused on the mission, on duty, on responsibility, that she'd almost forgotten she had one. A small apartment in Virginia Beach, a sister in California, a mother in Arizona who pretended not to worry, friends she hadn't spoken to in 6 months, a life beyond the uniform. She typed, I'm okay. I'll call tonight. Tell Mom I love her and I'll visit as soon as I have leave. Love to everyone. The walk to the parking lot felt longer than it should have. Her shoulder still ached where Morrison had shoved her. Her feet hurt in boots she hadn't worn in months. The uniform felt strange after so long in civilian clothes. But with each step, Elena felt herself settling back into her own skin. Not Commander Martinez, undercover operative. Not whoever she'd pretended to be in Jakarta. Just Elena. Just herself. Her car was where she'd left it 6 months ago, in long-term parking. The battery was probably dead. She'd need to call for a jump. But right now, she just wanted to sit in the driver's seat, in her own space, and breathe as she walked. She passed a group of young sailors, maybe 20 years old, standing near a barracks building. They were laughing about something, relaxed and easy in the morning sun. One of them noticed Elena and called the group to attention automatically. At ease, Elena said, waving them down. As you were. They relaxed, but still watched her with interest. One of the young men, barely old enough to shave, spoke up nervously. Admiral, can I ask you something? Of course. Is it true what happened this morning? With Captain Morrison? Elena considered how to answer. She could deflect, maintain professional distance, keep the command mystique intact. Or she could be human. It's true that Captain Morrison and I had a disagreement. It's true that he behaved inappropriately. And it's true that there are consequences for that behavior, regardless of rank. Good, one of the young women said quietly. Then, louder. I mean, good that there are consequences, ma'am. Some of us have had experiences with Captain Morrison. It's good to know that matters. It always matters, Elena said firmly. Your experience matters. Your voice matters. Don't ever let anyone convince you otherwise. They nodded, something like hope dawning on their young faces. Elena wondered how many times they'd been told the opposite. How many times they'd kept quiet because speaking up seemed impossible. One more thing, she added. If any of you ever face harassment, abuse, or behavior that violates the code of conduct, report it. Use the chain of command. If that doesn't work, go around it. Keep going until someone listens. Because that's not weakness, that's courage. Yes, ma'am. They CHORUSED. As Elena walked away, she heard one of them whisper, See? I told you people like her still exist in the Navy. People like her. Officers who cared more about integrity than politics. Leaders who used authority to protect instead of punish. Warriors who fought for justice, even when it was inconvenient. She'd spent 6 months in Jakarta proving she could be ruthless when necessary. Cold and calculating. Willing to make hard choices and live with the consequences. But standing in this parking lot, bruised and exhausted and more herself than she'd been in half a year, Elena realized something important. The hardest battles weren't fought in warehouses or hostile territory. They were fought in hallways and offices, in quiet moments when it would be easier to look away. When speaking up had consequences. When doing the right thing cost something real. Benjamin Harris had understood that. He'd volunteered knowing the risks because he believed the mission mattered. Those 6 sailors who came forward about Morrison understood it too. They'd found courage despite their fear because someone showed them it was possible. And maybe, Elena thought as she reached her car, that was the real measure of leadership. Not how well you executed operations or how many medals you earned, but how many people found their own courage because you showed them yours. Her car battery was indeed dead. While she waited for base security to bring jumper cables, Elena sat in the driver's seat and watched the naval base come fully alive around her. Ships preparing to depart, personnel moving with purpose, the endless rhythm of military life continuing as it always had and always would. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Admiral Patterson. Morrison officially relieved of command effective immediately. Full investigation underway. Also, Benjamin Harris's mother wants to meet you before the congressional briefing, not during. I told her you'd call to arrange it. Her number's attached. Take care of yourself, Elena. You've earned the rest. Elena saved the number, took a deep breath, and dialed. A woman's voice answered, soft and careful. Hello? Mrs. Harris? This is Admiral Elena Martinez. I understand you wanted to speak with me about Benjamin. There was a long pause. Then, yes, I do. Can you? Would you be willing to meet for coffee? Maybe tomorrow? I know you must be busy, but I need to say some things in person. Of course. Anywhere you'd like, anytime. There's a cafe near the base. The Morning Anchor. Do you know it? Elena did. It was where sailors took their families for breakfast, where promotions were celebrated and farewells were said. A place thick with memory and meaning. I know it. What time? 8 o'clock? I'm an early riser. Can't seem to break the habit, even now. 8 o'clock is perfect, Mrs. Harris. Thank you, Admiral. And please, call me Margaret. I feel like we already know each other, in a way. Benjamin talked about you in his letters. Said you were the kind of officer who made him proud to serve. Elena's throat tightened. He made me proud too, Margaret. More than I can say. After they hung up, Elena sat in the quiet car and let herself cry properly this time. For Benjamin Harris and his mother's grace. For the 6 months of holding everything inside. For the weight of command and the cost of duty. And the privilege of serving alongside people braver than she'd ever be. The security guard arrived with jumper cables. Her car started on the second try, engine coughing to life with a familiar rumble. Elena thanked the guard and began the drive home, through the base gates and onto familiar roads she'd driven 1,000 times before. The morning had started with a collision in a hallway. It was ending with Elena driving toward a month of leave. A meeting with a grieving mother, and a future she couldn't quite imagine yet. Between those points lay Morrison's downfall, 6 sailors finding their voices. And a reminder that sometimes the most important battles were fought not with weapons, but with words and courage and the simple, radical act of standing up. As she pulled into her apartment complex, Elena thought about the young sailor's whispered words. People like her still exist. She hoped that was true. Hoped the Navy, the military, the country still had room for officers who cared more about people than politics, who used authority to serve rather than dominate, who understood that real strength wasn't about never being afraid. It was about being afraid and standing up anyway. Elena parked in her assigned spot and sat for a moment longer, feeling the weight lift from her shoulders. Not all of it. Benjamin Harris's death would stay with her forever. The decisions she'd made, the people she'd sent into danger, the cost of every choice, those would become part of her permanent landscape. But today, she'd done something good. Maybe not intentionally. Maybe just by being in the wrong place at the wrong time and refusing to back down. But 6 people had found their courage. A bully had faced consequences, and a tired admiral had remembered why she'd put on the uniform in the first place. That was enough. That was more than enough. Elena grabbed her bag, locked her car, and walked toward her apartment. The sun was fully out now, warm on her face, promising a beautiful October day. Tomorrow she'd meet Margaret Harris and say whatever needed to be said. Monday she'd face congressional committees and give her debrief. Next month she'd start her new assignment and continue the endless work of serving. But right now she was going home. To sleep in her own bed, eat a real meal, and remember what it felt like to be just Elena Martinez, daughter, sister, friend, sailor. A woman who'd served her country with honor and would continue doing so until the day she couldn't anymore. The hallway to her apartment smelled like coffee and someone's bacon breakfast. Normal sounds filtered through the walls, television news, a child laughing, life continuing in all its ordinary beauty. Elena unlocked her door and stepped inside. Home. Finally home. She dropped her bag by the door, kicked off her boots, and walked to the window overlooking the parking lot. In the distance, she could just see the ocean, gray-blue and eternal under the October sky. Somewhere out there, ships carried sailors who believed in something bigger than themselves, who served with honor even when no one was watching, who made the kind of sacrifices that never made the news but held the country together. Anyway, Benjamin Harris had been one of those sailors. So were the 6 people who'd found courage to speak up about Morrison. So was that young petty officer, Amy Carson, who'd thanked Elena for something she barely done. So was Elena herself. On her better days, the weight of the Admiral's insignia felt heavy on her collar. But it was a good weight. The weight of responsibility, yes, but also of trust. Trust that she'd use her authority wisely. That she'd stand up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. That she'd never forget what it felt like to be pushed against a wall by someone with more power. Elena finally removed her uniform jacket, hanging it carefully in the closet. Tomorrow she'd have it cleaned and pressed. Tomorrow she'd be Admiral Martinez again, with all that entailed. But today, just for today, she was just Elena, and that was exactly who she needed to be. She walked to her bedroom, lay down on the bed without bothering to change, and closed her eyes. Sleep came quickly, deep and dreamless. The sleep of someone who'd fought a good fight and won something worth winning. In the morning, she'd wake up and face whatever came next. But for now, she rested. And that too was enough. The end.